All right, so today we're going to be looking at systems of equations word problems. So the first problem we're looking at says Jamie cleaned the coin fountain in the mall and found 20 coins consisting of nickels and quarters. Her coin collection totaled to $2.60. How many nickels and quarters did she find? So as always, we're going to start by looking at the last sentence of the problem because that's usually telling us what we're looking for. And it's asking us how many nickels and how many quarters did she find. So we're trying to determine the number of nickels and we're trying to determine the number of quarters, both of which are in the fountain. So I'm going to make a let statement. I'm going to let n equal the number of nickels. I'm going to let q equal the number of quarters. Okay. So now that we have our let statement, we're going to try to make a system of equations. Okay. So one key piece of information that we have is we know that she cleaned the coin fountain in the mall and found 20 coins. Okay. Now, the problem is they didn't tell us how many nickels and how many quarters there were, right? So she could have had, let's say, hypothetically thinking about like 19 nickels and one quarter. She could have had 10 nickels and 10 quarters, but we want to figure out that combination that's going to also total to this amount. Okay. So the first equation we're going to make is going to be dealing with the total of coins. Okay. So I don't know how many nickels I have, but I know that I have n nickels. And I don't know how many quarters I have, but I know that I have q quarters. And I know when I total up my number of nickels and my number of quarters, I have to get 20 coins. All right. Now, the other key piece of information that we're given is that our coin collection totals to $2.60. So now that makes it a very specific combination of nickels and quarters that we need for this to work. Okay. So now we're going to think about the weight of each of these coins, right? So I know that a nickel is worth 5 cents. So for every nickel, I want to be multiplying that number of nickels by 5 cents. So I'm going to do 0.05n because that's how much a nickel is, plus 0.25q because that's how much a quarter is, and that's going to equal to $2.60. All right? So those are our two equations. This one's talking about the total of coins, and this one is talking about the total value of the coins. Now that we have our two equations, we can go about actually solving our system. So I'm going to go ahead and just rewrite this for a moment. I have 0.05n plus 0.25q equals $2.60. All right. Now we can solve this equation using one of two methods. We can use elimination or we can use substitution. Elimination, remember you want your variables lined up like I have here, and then you want to cancel one. While on the other hand, substitution, you want to have a variable by itself. So I'm going to choose substitution just because if I look at this equation, n plus q equals 20, I only have to take one step to get a variable isolated. So if in this equation I wanted to isolate the n, I could subtract q from both sides. So I'm left with n equals 20 minus q. Now that I know that I can rewrite n as 20 minus q, I could go right ahead and I could substitute this 20 minus q right in for n into my second equation. So I'm going to rewrite my second equation as 0.05. Instead of the n, I have 20 minus q. And then I still have the remainder of the equation plus 0.25q equals $2.60. And my next step is I'm going to go right ahead and I'm going to distribute this 0.05 to each of my terms. So I'm going to do 0.05 times 20, and that's going to go ahead and give me 1. And then I'm going to do 0.05 times negative q, which is going to be negative 0.05q plus 0.25q, and that's still going to equal $2.60. Now I have like terms in my equation. I can combine negative 0.05q and positive 0.25q. So if I add negative 0.05q plus 0.25q, I'm left with 0.2q. So now I have 1 plus 0.2q equals 260. And my goal is to get the q by itself. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract 1 from both sides of the equation. This will go ahead and cancel. So now I'm left with 0.2q equals 160. Now my final step, I'm going to go ahead and divide both sides by 0.2. Okay, this will cancel. And when I take $1.60 and divide that by 0.2, I get that q is 8. Remember, you want to make sure that your answer makes sense. So it makes sense for my number of coins to be a whole number, right? I'm not going to have half a nickel, half a coin. That's why it's important to check that your answer makes sense in the context of the problem. Now, the question asks for how many nickels and how many quarters, okay? So I know from this equation, but my number of nickels is equal to 20 minus q. So to find my number of nickels, I'm going to go ahead and do 20 minus 8. So that must mean my number of nickels is 12. And then, check that your answer makes sense. 8 and 12, that gives me 20, right? And if I also wanted, I could check that my answer makes sense and that I get the $2.60, right? So nickels are 12. That's the number of them. So if I do 12 times 0.05, that leaves me with 60 cents. If I go ahead and do my 8 quarters times 0.25, that leaves me with $2. So I know that I get my $2.60. I know that my answer is correct, right? So for this problem, Jamie found 8 quarters and 12